thing. Now, something I'd like to kind of combine now with Rsync is the realization that, well, if I'm doing a backup, I don't want it to happen just once, right? I want to come up with this idea of a backup schedule. And so oftentimes we as cyber professionals are taking our ideas of trying to perform backups and putting it and combining it with automation. And so what I'd like to kind of explore next is how can I take this Rsync utility, which could be useful for backups, whether you're doing consistency or just accruing all the files, and actually have it be automated for me. Okay. And so to start exploring automation, what I would really say is there's a number of different ways that you could go about doing this. There's a lot of different strategies you could use to automate the backing up of different locations and different files. So you could think of it in terms of, well, I could write a script, I could write a program to do it. There's a whole bunch of utilities that maybe I could download and bring into the computer to do it. So if you know of some other way to start automating things, like, that's great. You know, the more you can learn, the better. The one that I'd like to show is kind of one that's built oftentimes into our Linux systems, and that's our Cron service. And so you can check to see that this is something that's actually running. We've checked running services before with something like System CTL status, and you can check Cron. That's oftentimes the name of the service. On some of your CentOS-based systems, it might be called Cron D. A lot of times they toss that D there onto the end of the service name. And so System CTL status Cron D, that might be another way that you would actually check to see, do you have your Cron service on and installed and running on a system? And most of your Linux distributions, it's probably going to be available through just the keyword Cron. And you'll see it is currently running. And the general idea here is using the Cron service. This is designed to help you as the administrator set up routine automated tasks. You can have commands run on a routine automated basis. It's like, okay, that sounds good. How do I go about doing that? And so there's a few different ways that we want to explore using your Cron service. And one of the main things to understand is that as part of the Cron service, you have all of these different, what I would call crontabs. And so these are files that are created on the computer, and each one of these little crontabs could include automatic commands that are supposed to run. And so now the question for you becomes, how many are there? Where are they? How do I manage them? And just how do I even just be aware of them in the first place to start to understand what are some of the things that this service is doing for me automatically? Okay. Now, some of the first ones I'd like to show here are accessible through what I'll say is the crontab -e command. Okay, so crontab -e. This is one way you can get to some of your automated stuff. And when you very first open this for the first time, it picks which text editor do you want to use, right? Do you want to use Nano? Do you want to use VI or Vim or something like that? I'll stick with Nano and I'll pick number one. It doesn't matter. But if you prefer to use something else, certainly you can use something else. Okay, and this is what the file should look like. So you'll see it kind of gives you some information, say blah blah blah. Yes, this is the thing that's managed by Cron. And if you come kind of down to the bottom, you'll see it's got about a page worth of commented out notes and information. But the really interesting stuff here is kind of at the bottom, where it says you can take information on routine basics, or on a routine basis, and set up when do you want these commands to run. And so realizing that you have these 5 different time fields, you've got every minute, every hour, every day of the month, every month of the year, and then finally every day of the week. And these are in that very specific order, where this allows you to say, when do you want your task to occur? All right, and they show an example down here in the cron tab as well. All right, so this is how you would write out 0, 5, asterisk, asterisk, 1 to mean run on the 0th minute, on the 5th hour of the day, any particular day of the week. I'm not restricting the day of the month. I'm not restricting what month of the year, or excuse me, and then I'm picking the very first day of the week. All right, and so being able to write out a little code like this in this particular tab, in this cron tab, will now allow you to pick when is a good automated time to be able to start doing these things. Okay, and then after this is where you would put what's the command that I want to run on a routine basis. All right, so let's give it a try. And maybe to be really aggressive about this, I'll do something and say like, asterisk, 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 asterisk. All right, really common thing. You'll just type out 5 asterisks, which means every minute of every hour of every single day of the month, every month of the year, and every day of the week. So effectively, it's every minute. Every single minute, I'm going to go and run this command. All right. And so what's a good command that maybe I could toss in here just to see the cron tab actually working? A good command, I think, just for practice is actually like the date command. Okay. The date command is, we'll see here in a second, all it does is just spits out the current date and time. And so what I like about this command is that if you run it again and again and again, you'll keep getting a new updated time, a new updated piece of information. But it will allow me to track what's actually happening in my cron tab. Okay. And what I'll do is I'll take the output of this date command and I'll put it in a file. I'll put it in a file just here on my desktop. All right, so I'll take this and I'll redirect the output from my date command and I'll write it to, well, where's my desktop? It's in /home/sandbox/desktop. And then I'll put it in like a date tracker file, like date tracker.txt, something like that. All right. And this is about as low end, as unsophisticated as you can get with creating a cron tab, where you've got some command that you're going to run and you use this cron tab to set up the automation for it. And then I just go ahead and save this, Control X, Y, enter, right? Or escape:/WQ if you happen to be working with VI. So let's see what the date command would normally do, right? If I type out date, you see it just as you would expect. It just says, here's the current date and time. And if I run it multiple times, like you can watch the seconds track by. All right, so this is why I like this command for this activity, because you can it's a command that will give you different output every single time that it runs, and it kind of goes along with that timestamp that we care about with a cron tab. Now, of course, I need to wait like for another minute to pass for a lot of times for these cron tabs to get applied. Something else that you can try to do on some systems just to make sure that it might get applied a little faster and make sure that your changes actually are getting applied is, remember, this is a service that's running. And so some people, they like to, egg it along by simply restarting the service. Like, let me make sure everything that I did is I'll go in and I'll do like a systemctl restart cron just to make sure that any of my new cron tabs that we're running now get applied. And so, yeah, sure, I could try that. You'll see on the Ubuntu system, I haven't typed anything in my date tracker file, just popped up. So it's not always necessary, but sometimes you might know I want to do it for peace of mind. It's kind of like spamming the save button a whole bunch of times. But nevertheless, here it is, right? I've got this new date tracker.txt that ran. And let's see what's inside it, right? I'll cat out this date tracker file. And just as you would expect, it's like as soon as the next minute came along, your cron system went and said, all right, let's go ahead and run this command again and track to see what's in the cron tab. And so it went and time stamped it with the current time, and okay, that's good. Things are working. Now let's see where this cron tab actually popped up in our system. In order to see the location where this particular cron tab popped up in our system, we will need sudo. We will need sudo to take a look at this. All right, so let's take a look. I'll do a sudo ls just to be able to see what's currently in there. And the location where a lot of these are is inside var /var. So I'll do an ls of /var /spool spool /cron cron /crontabs. Okay, /var /spool /cron /crontabs. And if you take a look in this location, I'll just confirm my password of just password. You'll be able to see that I now have this new sandbox file. All right, so this is something that wasn't there before, but that's what we got going on here. And if I were to actually cat it out and look at the contents, I'll do like a sudo cat, and then I'll actually cat out the one thing that's in here called sandbox. Okay, you'll be able to see it's like, oh, there's my cron tab. Okay, so when you are using the crontab-e command, that's how we went and accessed this. It automatically goes and creates this file. Okay, so anytime you're logged in as a user and you run this crontab-e, all right, it is going to this particular location and modifying a cron tab where you're creating these jobs specifically for your user account. All right, that's a really important thing to start understanding here, because if you think about this computer as a server that could have multiple users. Oh, okay. So if you've got something that's running that has multiple users, then potentially each one of your users, anytime that they run crontab-e, they're going to create a new cron tab in this particular folder location. So this becomes a really good location as an administrator to keep track of. Like, who has cron tabs and what are they? you know, especially if you relate this directly to a competition environment. Oh, yeah, who has cron tabs and what is in those cron tabs? That becomes a really important concept to start wrapping our head around. And so crontab-e is just a quick way to go jump to this location and create these files and make them formatted. At least gives you the kind of the skeleton to start working with where you can start building these out. I've probably rambled on here for another minute, so if I check my date tracker again, cat out my date track. Yeah, you see it's gone here a couple more times, and you get the idea that it's just running every single minute. Whatever your command is, it'll just do it again and do it again and do it again. So yeah, really, really good idea here to start understanding how we can set up some automation. Let's take a look though at how I could start accomplishing this, or use this to accomplish my backup. All right, so let's say I wanted my backup to happen every minute. And so I could take something like my previous command that I was running, right? I had that rsync command. If I hit a couple up arrows here, I'll be able to find, like, I had that rsync command that I was running to be able to accomplish the backups, right? This -av, I had the file path to stuff, space, and then the file path to backups. Well, maybe in a competition environment, I might pick a really key location that includes maybe some configuration files. Maybe it includes some critical user data, some things that I need on my server in order for my server to score properly. And maybe after I've got it working once, I'll set up a backup. So then if things get trashed in the future by some mysterious force, the red team, then maybe I'll have a quick way to recover, right? A big part about cybersecurity is not just protecting, it's also recovering. How quickly can you recover from getting knocked down? And so let's take this command and we'll build it into our cron tab. Okay, so I'll take my crontab space -e, jump back into the same file, and I'll just tack something onto the end. Right, so I've got that one little cron job that's running that's just tracking the date. Okay, fine. Well, maybe I'll make another one here. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. And every single minute for as long from now on, let's go ahead and actually do a backup as well. So I could do my rsync command, space -av. If I'm worried about things getting deleted and I actually want to accrue all the backups, I will not toss on the --delete option. It's like that'll enforce consistency. So maybe for my configuration files, those types of things, maybe that's just not appropriate. Okay. And so then after this, we could have the, well, where's the file path that you want to back up? I can't just cheat and use relative file paths right now. I'd have to type out the whole thing. So /home, /sandbox, /desktop, then /stuff, space, and then where do I want to back this up to? Well, I want to put it in the backups folder, right? So that's in /home, /sandbox, /desktop, /backups. And if it goes off the screen a little bit, that's okay, right? Doesn't hurt anything to kind of go off the screen. But yeah, there's the command, okay? And so now if I add this to my list and say Control-X-Y, enter, all right, I'll have to, maybe I'll make a quick change to my stuff. I'll add in like a practice3 file. So I'll have like touch stuff /practice3, right? Just something new that gets created and tossed in there. And if I kind of ramble on here for another minute, maybe I'll check my date tracker. Let's do a cat of my date tracker command here and see, okay, let's see when the next minute turns over. If we go into our backups location, I'll do like an ls of backups to be able to start tracking. Hey, it's already happened. There we go. All right, so the next time the minute happens, of course, something actually gets added in and gets consistent here with our files. So really good idea to be able to set up some backups, but also to have it happen automatically. And now you have a good way to recover anytime something here goes wrong. All right, so let's take this a step further. I said I wanted to start including this idea of cron tabs and this idea of creating automatic backups specifically for users, all right? So we were exploring how the users have the way to create their own cron tabs. What we should expand now into is understanding, yeah, those are specifically for user accounts when those users are available. There also are system-wide cron tabs. All right, so there's a location that has the user-specific ones. There also are ones for the entire system, and those are located in /etc. All right, so if you do an ls of /etc, you'll be able to see, like, yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff in here, but you kind of scroll up and take a look under the, where is it, under C, A, B, C, here it is, cron. You see, there's a whole bunch of things here that are labeled cron. I'm looking here on the left, like cron-d, cron.daily, .hourly, .monthly, cron.weekly, and there's this thing called crontab. All right, so every single one of these locations allows you to use the structure that Cron has created for you to be able to set up, well, here's where you could have some tasks that run daily. Here's where you could have some tasks that run monthly, the ones that run weekly. Or you just have this generic file, one just called Crontab. And so there is this big structure, and you have to really start paying attention to how many different files do I have on my computer that are doing things automatically. All right, there's a number of different locations that you might want to start checking. We were looking at the user-specific ones. Here are some that are system-wide. All right, and I'm going to take a look at this one right here, just this first one called Crontab. All right, so let's take a look at this. And if you check the permissions on this, ls-l of /etc/crontab, you'll see the permissions on this. Oh, this is owned by root. And other people can read it. They'd be able to see this file, but they would not be able to make changes. You will need sudo to actually come and make changes to this file. Okay, so why don't we do that? I'm going to do sudo and then use just keep using nano. If you want to use vi, that's fine, or vim. But I'll say sudo nano /etc/crontab. Oop, crontab. There we go. And we'll see this file structured pretty similarly, but it is a little bit more complex, and there's actually already things in the file. Right? So it tells you, like, this is the system-wide cron tab, where you can create cron jobs that could run for the entire computer, not just for a specific user. All right? But the structure is the same. The idea that you've got to you have to pick which minute do you want to use, which hour, month, day of the month, day of the week, these types of things, right? Starts with Sunday, okay, fine, and goes through the rest of the week, but that's the general idea. So if you wanted to have the a system-wide event happening, you could come into this particular file as well and do something very similar. And they've got maybe slightly different spacing, but the spacing that we were doing before, that would certainly work for us as well. And so perhaps instead of having your backup happen as a specific user, you might want your backup to happen more on a system-wide basis. Because what if you have a particular user account, but no one's really accessing that user account? All right, so the cron jobs that are going to be running are really tied to who are the users and are they actually active and logging in and doing things. And if they're not, well, maybe from a backups perspective, you still want your backups to actually happen. And so that's the real key difference with this particular file, is you'll notice after you pick your time frames, after you've got your little asterisks or numbers that you're tossing in here, notice this particular file asks for a username. So that's a big difference with this particular file, is you can have cron jobs run, but you get to pick the user and the authority to which the command will run. And so maybe I'll have something like this where it's like asterisk, 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 right? I could still have something run every minute, but now, even if I'm not logged in as a particular user, I could still have something run with their authority level. And you can see there's already some in here that run with the root authority. So if you want something to have Linux, the admin account on Linux run it for you automatically, then this would be a good way to do that. All right, and so maybe instead I'd have my backup command, I'd toss it in here, right? The rsync space -av. Okay, again, the v becomes kind of irrelevant because it's happening in the background, but nevertheless, I could then type my location and maybe I'd have something like /home/sandbox /desktop/stuff, right? Something like that that's happening. And then I'll toss it, of course, in the backups, right? The /home/sandbox/desktop/backups. All right. And so now when I've got this particular command, now even if the sandbox user isn't active, you still have the system going and running this backup command. And maybe you want the --delete, maybe you don't, right? You'd have to pick whatever's appropriate for you. But this is a big difference between your /etc crontab versus what you had in that /var/spool/cron. Okay, the crontab-e option, user specific. /etc/crontab. Now we're looking at system-wide, and you get to pick the user and the authority on which it runs. So again, I kind of got two commands that are doing something similar, pretty much doing the same thing, but nevertheless, you want to pay attention to both of them. All right. And so this, like I said, it's another way to kind of go about doing things, and you have to figure out which is appropriate for your situation. If you want it to be tied to a specific user, or whether you want it to be tied to the entire system. Now, taking another look at this file here, something you want to understand, like I said, is, well, what else is in this file? All right. I didn't create this. Who created this? You know, what are these other things that are running automatically? Do you know what they are? Are they hacking your computer right now? Oh, I don't know, so this is something, like I said, you don't necessarily want to just go to system files and start deleting things, but you certainly want to take a look and be like, is there anything malicious in here? And if you remember back to a previous video, I had shown how to make a little backdoor using Netcat. And so think about something like this, where I could say every minute, every hour, all the time, just on the top of every minute, as the root user, what if I were to make a little Netcat backdoor listener? This was something I had covered in a previous video. You could check back to some of the networking ones on. But the idea being I could listen on a specific port, like port 12345, just picking a random port, and then drop you into, /bin/bash. Something like that is all it would take to create a backdoor. And now I've got a backdoor that's opening up on the computer every minute forever. So even if you close the back door, well, it's just going to open back up again. Oh, all right. So again, it doesn't take very long at all to compromise a computer as the attacker if they just get temporary access to your computer, whether they toss it in one of your user crontabs or toss it in here. Now it's actually running with root authority, but it creates a really quick way for people to go and establish backdoors for themselves. And so this type of thing is something you really want to pay attention to, or you know what, maybe I'll actually leave it in there, but I'll comment it out, right? So I'll have my -L, -P, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the -E/bin/bash, right? So something like this, I could have it in here, but I'll comment it out so it won't actually run. But, that's really all that it takes to compromise a computer in a really consistent basis. Not overly intelligent, like, obviously a good security administrator would be able to discover something like this and clean it up and start asking some serious questions. But still, we got to learn how to check for some of the basic things. So, but nevertheless, I'll save those. And these are the types of things, like I said, you'd want to start exploring these other folders. There's other cron folders in here, and these other cron folders could contain additional cron tabs. And so keeping an eye on a lot of this stuff is something that's really, really critical to maintaining security on your computer. What are all the automated things that are happening, either for good or for ill?